You humiliated him. You humiliated my entire family. Jessica didn't just scream. She detonated. The music in the bar didn't fade out. It died. 20 strangers turned their heads. The bartender froze. And I just sat there, watching the condensation slide down my vodka tonic. Wham! Her clutch hit the marble table. Are you even listening to me? She hissed, her face a blotchy, violent red. He felt rejected. You made him feel small. You were supposed to be the nice one. I took a sip. The vodka burned, but it was the only thing stopping me from laughing in her face. I didn't humiliate anyone. Jess, I just finally realized what I actually am to you. I'm not a guest. I'm an invoice. Rewind 7 days. 2 a.m. My apartment. The harsh blue glow of a spreadsheet burning my retinas. I call it the wedding tax. I'm 35, single. And in this friend group, that means I'm not a person. I'm a wallet with a pulse. I looked at the final tally for this wedding. Dress, sage green chiffon, ugly, $300. Hotel, 2 nights in a room that smells like wet dog, $450. Gift, the mandatory crystal vase, $200. Bachelorette, the all-inclusive nightmare in Cancun, $1,200. Total damage, $2,150. That's rent. That's a down payment on a car. I closed the laptop, feeling sick. I thought I paid that $2,150 to support my best friend, but I was wrong. That price tag included a hidden service fee, a mandatory date with her 42-year-old stepbrother, Dave. And trust me, Dave was not in the budget. The ambush didn't start at the altar. It started on a Tuesday, 5 days before the wedding, via a manic FaceTime call I never should have answered. Jessica's face filled my screen. She looked like a hostage negotiator running on dry shampoo and panic. Thank God. You're my rock. I literally can't do this week without you. I felt a twinge of guilt. I'm here. Jess, what do you need? Check your email. I just sent you a dossier. I clicked the notification. Dave, _ talking, _ points, .pdf. I frowned. Who is Dave? My stepbrother, the one from Ohio. Listen, I put you at table 9, next to him. Jessica wasn't looking at the camera. She was aggressively highlighting a seating chart. He's particular. He loves World War II naval history and he's strictly gluten-free but gets offended if you bring it up. Memorized page 2. He has a rescue dog named Rommel. I let out a laugh, a sharp, incredulous bark. Okay, Jess, funny. You want me to quiz him on battleships? Jessica didn't laugh. She stopped highlighting. She looked right at the lens. I need you to handle him. Her voice dropped to that conspiratorial whisper she uses when she's gossiping. He's awkward. I have investors at table 8. I can't have him roaming around talking about U-boats. You're good at people. You're the only one who can do this for me. Handle him. Like he was a volatile asset. Like I was a containment unit. Jess, I'm a bridesmaid, I said, a pit forming in my stomach. Not a babysitter. Just be a team player, she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. For me? Fast forward to the wedding day. If hell has a VIP section, it looks like that bridal suite. 90 degrees, smelling of hairspray and nervous sweat. I was steaming 5 layers of chiffon while Jessica screamed at a caterer about the shrimp count. I was the MVP. I was the fixer. I thought that bought me some immunity, but I was wrong. We were lined up on the lawn for photos. My feet were throbbing. The photographer yelled for the extended family shot. Get in here, Jessica barked. Before I could move, her hand was on my arm, fingers digging in hard. She physically shoved me to the far right. I stumbled, right into a wall of beige linen. I looked up, 6'2", heavy breathing, sweat pooling in the armpits of his jacket. Dave. He didn't look at my face. He didn't say hello. His eyes were locked firmly on my chest. He breathed in, a wet, rattling sound. Then, his gaze traveled slowly, deliberately down to my waist. "Stepmom says you're the last single one," he mumbled. Not a whisper, a statement of fact. "Good. Breeding. Hips." The world tilted. Good. Breeding. Hips. Bile rose in my throat, hot and acidic. I tried to step back, but Jessica's hand was still clamping my arm, locking me in place for the camera. She smiled, radiant and fake. I stood there, skin crawling, realizing the truth. There was nothing wrong with introducing two single people, but this wasn't an introduction. Been an assignment. By 7 p.m., I wasn't just tired. I was dissociating. Bridesmaid burnout is a specific kind of torture. It's dehydration, fake eyelashes gluing your eyelids shut, and the crushing weight of being a prop in someone else's play. I had survived the ceremony. I had survived the photos. I had successfully avoided Dave during cocktail hour by hiding in a bathroom stall for 20 minutes. I needed a lifeline. I ducked into a quiet corner near the kitchen doors, away from the thumping bass. I pulled out my phone. A voice note from Mark. Mark, my secret. The long-distance guy who actually treated me like a human being. I pressed play, holding the phone tight to my ear like a life raft. "Hey, Via," his voice came through, warm, low, sane. "Just checking in. Hope you survived the night without killing anyone. Call me when you escape." My shoulders dropped 2 inches. That voice was safety. I pocketed the phone and made a decision. I was bypassing the head table. I wasn't going back to duty. I made a beeline for the cool table in the back corner. My college friends, Matt, Chris, and Tyler, the boys. "Score?" I asked, sliding into the empty chair. "Knights are up 2-1, Chris grinned, sliding a glass of champagne toward me. "Third period. Sit down. Look like you've been to war." "You have no idea," I exhaled. For 10 minutes, I was free. We watched the grainy hockey stream on a propped-up phone. We laughed. I drank the champagne and felt the ick from Dave finally start to wash away. Then, the air pressure dropped. I felt a presence behind me before I heard her. The laughter at the table died instantly. "What are you doing?" I turned. Jessica was looming over me. The blushing bride mask was gone. Her eyes were hard, scanning the table like a manager looking for an employee on an unauthorized break. "I'm watching the game." "Jess," I said, keeping my voice light, taking a breather. "Why aren't you at table 9? Her voice was a hiss, sharp enough to cut through the DJ's bass. "Dave is sitting there by himself. He's waiting for you." My heart hammered against my ribs. Thump, thump, thump. "I'm not sitting at table 9, I said. My voice didn't shake. "I'm not interested. Jess, if he wants to talk, he's a grown man. He can come over here." Jessica didn't blink, and her jaw tightened. She leaned in, invading my personal space. "I promised him," she whispered, the venom finally leaking out. "I told him you'd sit with him. Don't embarrass me. Go, now." She wasn't asking a friend. She was commanding a subordinate. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized she didn't care about the breeding hips comment. She didn't care about my comfort. She only cared that her resource was malfunctioning. "No," I said. Jessica stood up straight. She looked at me with pure disgust. Then she stomped off. her heels clicking like gunshots on the parquet floor. Beside me, Tyler leaned in, his face serious. "She promised you to him?" he whispered, shaking his head. "Dude, that's on her. You're under no obligation to entertain advances just because you're single. That's messed up." He was right. But as I watched Jessica disappear into the crowd, I tasted metal in my mouth. This wasn't over. This was a declaration of war. I didn't have long to recover. Maybe 10 minutes. I was clutching my champagne flute like a weapon. My heart rate finally starting to drop when I saw the next wave coming. It was Mike, the groom. He walked over looking like a kicked puppy. Tuxedo tie undone, eyes darting around to make sure the perfect day wasn't cracking. He didn't look like a friend. He looked like a middle manager sent to fire someone. "Hey," he mumbled, rubbing his neck. "Mike," I said, "guard up. Look, Jessica is in the bathroom crying." The sentence landed like a punch to the gut. An old, trained reflex kicked in. The fawn response. My stomach dropped. Oh God, I made the bride cry. I started to stand up, but then I saw Mike's eyes. They weren't sad. They were annoyed. "She's a mess," he pressed, stepping closer so the other guests wouldn't hear. "She says you're ruining the dynamic. Can you just go sit with Dave for 20 minutes? Buy him a drink? Take one for the team? Take one for the team? Like I'm jumping on a grenade?" "I'm not a prop, Mike," I said, my voice shaking. "If Jessica is crying because I won't date her stepbrother, that's not a seating chart problem. That's a Jessica problem." Mike sighed. The nice guy mask slipped. He looked at me with cold exhaustion. "You're making this really difficult. It's just 20 minutes. Stop being dramatic." "Dramatic?" "No," I said. He walked away, shaking his head like I was the villain. The adrenaline spiked, buzzing in my ears. Tinnitus? R-E-E-E-E-E-E. The room felt too small. The air felt too thick. I couldn't breathe. "I'll be right back," I choked out to the guys. "Need air." I headed for the restrooms near the lobby. The hallway was dimmer here. The thumping bass of the reception faded into a muffled, rhythmic heartbeat behind the heavy doors. Click-clack, click-clack. My heels on the marble. Faster, faster. I turned the corner toward the ladies' room and stopped dead. He was waiting. Dave, leaning against the wall. He straightened up, a slow, lopsided grin spreading across his face. He didn't look socially anxious now. He looked hungry. "There she is," he slurred. I tried to step around him. "Excuse me, Dave." He sidestepped, blocking my path. The hallway shrank. "Jessica said you're hiding from me," he said, invading my personal space. I smelled stale wine and cheap cologne. "She said you're playing hard to get. I like that. I like a challenge." My skin went cold. Triangulation. Jessica wasn't just pressuring me. She was feeding him a script. She turned my no into a chase me. "I'm not playing anything," I said, backing up until my shoulder blades hit the plaster. "Move." "Come on," he chuckled. Low, guttural. His hand, heavy and damp, landed on my waist. His fingers squeezed, digging into my ribs, claiming me. "Stepmom said you were lonely," he whispered, leaning in. "You don't have to be." Snap. The fear evaporated, replaced by pure, white-hot revulsion. I slapped his hand away. Hard. "Don't. Touch. Me." I spun around. I didn't run. I marched. I burst through the double doors, the wall of noise hitting me like a shield. I made it back to the table and grabbed the bottle of Pinot Grigio. My hands were shaking so bad I spilled wine on the white tablecloth. "Whoa," Tyler said, catching my wrist. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Dave," I whispered. "Hallway. He..." He grabbed me. He said Jessica told him to chase me. The fun vibe at the table died. Tyler looked at me. He didn't tell me to calm down. He didn't tell me I was crazy. He offered me the truth I was too scared to see. Listen to me, Tyler said, his voice cutting through the noise. This isn't about you being difficult. It's the trope. I blinked. What? You're single and you're 35, he said, gesturing at the room. To people like Jessica and Dave, that means you're desperate. They think you want rando number 50 just because he has a pulse. He poured more wine into my glass. They treat your time like a charity project, he said, like they're doing the world a favor by offloading him onto you. But you aren't a rehab center for broken men. Charity project. The words hit me like a revelation. The fog lifted. The guilt vanished. I wasn't the bad friend. I wasn't the drama. I was the target. I wiped my face. The shame dissolved into cold, hard clarity. You're right, I whispered. I'm done being the charity.
Wow, charity project? If the audacity of this bride and her creepy stepbrother is making your blood boil right now, hit that subscribe button because OP is about to deliver the most satisfying reality check of the year, and you do not want to miss the explosion in the next scene.
The music in the bar had stopped, or maybe I just couldn't hear it anymore. After Jessica's scream, "You humiliated him," the air had been sucked out of the room. A couple at the next table froze, forks halfway to their mouths. The bartender stopped wiping a glass. Jessica stood there, chest heaving. Her perfect bride mask was gone. In its place was a map of blotchy, red panic. She wasn't my best friend anymore. She was a cornered animal. He felt rejected, she spat, her voice trembling. He has social anxiety. He struggles with cues. And you treated him like he was invisible. You were a stuck-up, rude bitch. I stared at her. I felt my pulse slow down. The panic was gone. The guilt was gone. All that was left was ice. He grabbed me. Jessica, I said. My voice was a whisper, but it carried like a gunshot. In the hallway, he cornered me. He touched my waist, and he told me that you said I was playing hard to get. I watched her eyes. I waited for the horror. I waited for the "I'm sorry, it didn't come." Jessica's eyes darted around the room, checking the audience. Then she waved her hand, swatting the truth away. "Oh my God, stop being so dramatic," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "He didn't mean it like that. He's just awkward. He thought you were cute. The least you could have done was be nice to him instead of running away." Click. That was the sound of the bridge burning. She knew. She knew he was a creep. She knew he was unsafe. And she didn't care. To her, my safety was less important than her seating chart. I stood up. I didn't rush. I uncrossed my legs. I placed my hands on the marble table. I rose to my full height. Jessica took a stumble step back. Her eyes widened. She expected me to cry. She expected me to fold. She wasn't ready for the ice. "Nice?" I repeated. The word tasted like ash. "You wanted me to be nice?" "Yes," she stammered, clutching her purse like a shield. "That's what bridesmaids do. They help." "I helped," I said. I stepped closer. She shrank back. "I spent $2,000 to be here. Jessica, I planned your bachelorette. I steamed your dress while you screamed at the caterers. I held your flowers. I held your hair back while you puked tequila in Cancun." Jessica opened her mouth, but I cut her off with a look so sharp it could have drawn blood. "But I am not a minder for a middle-aged man," I said. My voice was rising now, commanding the room. "I didn't sign up to be a buffer for your creepy stepbrother." Jessica's face went pale. The narcissistic collapse was hitting. She looked around, realizing she was losing the crowd. "Stop," she hissed, tears forming. "You're making a scene." "No, you made the scene," I countered. You promised me to him like I was a party favor. You told him to chase me. I leaned in, close enough to smell the fear and the expensive Chardonnay. If I had known I was expected to babysit an underemployed 42-year-old man, I would have retired from this friendship years ago. Jessica flinched. She looked small, pathetic. I just wanted him to have a date. I picked up my purse. I looked her dead in the eye. Then hear this clearly. Jessica, I'm not an escort. I let the silence hang. 1 beat, 2 beats. If you were so invested in him having company, you should have hired him a professional. The bartender audibly gasped. Jessica stood frozen, mouth open, paralyzed by the absolute destruction of her argument. I reached into my wallet. I pulled out a $20 bill and slapped it onto the table next to her trembling hand. For the drink, I said. I quit. Don't ask me to be a bridesmaid again. Consider me retired. I turned on my heel and walked out. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could feel the heat of the bridge burning behind me. And honestly, it felt like warmth. The Sunday after the wedding, I went to my parents' house. I needed a sanctuary. I needed my mom to tell me I wasn't crazy. Instead, I walked into an ambush. The dining room was suffocating. The air conditioner hummed, but the air felt dead. The only sound was the aggressive clink-scrape-clink of silver forks hitting china plates. My phone buzzed in my purse. Another mutual friend texting me that I had ruined the aesthetic. I pushed a P around my plate, waiting for the silence to break. Jessica called, my mother said. She didn't look up from her roast beef. She tried to pimp me out. Mom, I said, the exhaustion hitting me like a wave. She tried to force me onto her creep of a stepbrother. My mother sighed. It was a heavy, wet sound, the sound of 30 years of disappointment. She set her fork down and looked at me with pity. Dave has a very good job in logistics. Honey, she said, and he owns his own condo. I stared at her. He grabbed me. Mom. He refused to pass in a hallway. Men are awkward, my father chimed in, wiping his mouth. You have to give people a chance. You aren't getting any younger, my mother added, reaching across the table to pat my hand. It felt condescending. We just worry. You're 35. You can't be so picky at your age. Picky. I pulled my hand away like she had burned me. The room shrank. The walls were closing in. I realized then the call was coming from inside the house. It wasn't just Jessica. It was the culture. It was this suffocating suburban expectation that a woman without a ring is a broken appliance that needs to be returned to the store. I left dinner early. I drove home in silence. A hollow ache in my chest. I got back to my apartment and called Mark, my long-distance secret, my lifeline. He picked up on the 3rd ring. Hey, I said, my voice cracking. Rough night. My parents? Via? He cut me off. His tone was flat, corporate. I'm glad you called. I've been thinking. My stomach dropped. This, he said. Us. The distance. It's too hard. I met someone here. Someone local. It's just easier. The line went dead. I sat on my couch in the dark. No best friend. No boyfriend. My family thinking I was defective because I wouldn't date a predator. I opened my laptop. The harsh blue light flooded the room. I stared at a tab I had left open for months. Senior Logistics Coordinator. Location, Brisbane, Australia. I had been scared to apply. Scared to leave my life here. But looking around my empty apartment, hearing the echo of my mother's picky comment, I realized I didn't have a life. I had a cage. My finger hovered over the mouse. Click. Application submitted. 1 year later. The first thing you notice about the Gold Coast is the light. It hits the ocean and shatters into a million diamonds. I sat on the deck of a surf club, squinting against the sun. I looked different. My hair was chopped into a bob, my skin was bronzed, and on my right forearm, a fresh tattoo, a small R stylized wave. I wasn't the bridesmaid here. I wasn't the spinster. I was just me. 2 schooners and a basket of chips, my friend Sarah said, dropping a tray onto the wooden table. Sarah didn't know about Jessica. She didn't ask why I wasn't married. She just asked if I wanted to go hiking in the hinterland on Saturday. I took a sip of the cold beer. It tasted like salt air and peace. My phone buzzed on the table. I glanced at it, expecting a work email. Sender, Jessica. I froze. I hadn't spoken to her in 12 months. The text was a wall of gray bubbles, desperation radiating off the screen. Hey, I know you probably hate me. I just wanted to say, I miss you. Mike and I are having problems. He's sleeping in the guest room. I stared at the screen, feeling nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just a dull curiosity. I scrolled down. And you were right about Dave, she wrote. He got arrested last month. Peeping Tom charges. He was looking into windows in his complex. It's humiliating. I'm so sorry I didn't listen to you. Can we talk? I looked at the words. You were right. A year ago, that admission would have been my oxygen. I would have wanted to scream. I told you so. I would have wanted to reply and rub her nose in the wreckage of her life. But sitting there, with the Australian sun on my shoulders and the sound of the Pacific Ocean crashing below, I realized something. I didn't care. She was still living in the drama. She was still trapped in that small, miserable world. I wasn't. I didn't type a reply. I didn't send a snarky comeback. I hit block. I deleted the thread. Everything okay? Sarah asked, dipping a chip in gravy. I looked up at the TV above the bar. They were replaying a highlight reel of the Vegas Golden Knights, my team. I raised my beer to the screen. Yeah, I smiled. And for the first time in my life, it reached my eyes. Everything is perfect. I didn't find a husband. I found a life. And honestly, I like her a lot better.
From professional bridesmaid to Australian free spirit, talk about a glow up. But here's the real question. Do you think OP should have replied to Jessica's text just to rub it in? Or was the silence the ultimate power move? Let me know in the comments below, team replies or team block. And if you love seeing OP find her spine, smash that like button on your way out.